Sugar, the substance humans crossed oceans for. The ingredient that helped shape colonial economies and plantation empires. The flavor that appears in birthday cakes, holiday desserts, sports drinks, breakfast cereal, and countless foods that most people don't even think of as sweet. And today, many people encounter added sugars throughout the day without even realizing it. But sugar stopped being simple a long time ago. Now there's cane sugar, honey, maple syrup, date syrup, rice syrup, coconut sugar, monk fruit, xylitol. Some are thousands of years old. The human preference for sweetness begins incredibly early in life, long before nutrition labels, long before supermarkets, long before civilization itself. For most of human history, sweet foods were rare. A tree might produce fruit for only a short period each year. Honey required finding wild bee colonies. Sugarcane grew in specific climates far from most populations. Sweetness meant calories. Calories meant survival. The people who enjoyed sweetness often gained access to valuable energy. And over thousands of generations, those preferences became deeply embedded in human biology. But then something happened. Humanity learned how to produce sweetness at scale. Today, sugar is no longer rare, it's everywhere. And the biological systems that evolved in a world of scarcity now exist in a world of abundance. The story of sugar is really the story of what happens when one of humanity's oldest survival instincts collides with modern technology. This is the sugar that transformed the modern world. Cane sugar, table sugar, sucrose. It comes from sugarcane, a giant tropical grass filled with sweet juice. For most of history, sugar was not an everyday ingredient. It was a luxury. Something rare, something expensive. In parts of medieval Europe, sugar was so valuable that wealthy households stored it in locked containers. People displayed elaborate sugar sculptures at banquets to demonstrate status and wealth. The ability to serve large amounts of sugar was once a symbol of power. Then production expanded. Trade routes grew. Plantations increased output. Refining became more efficient. And over time, sugar transformed from a luxury into a mass-market commodity. The result changed human diets forever. Today, sugar appears in foods people don't always associate with sweetness. Bread, sauces, breakfast cereals, protein bars, soft drinks, flavored yogurts, even foods marketed as healthy. Chemically, regular sugar is called sucrose. It consists of one glucose molecule joined to one fructose molecule. Glucose is used throughout the body as an energy source. Fructose is processed primarily by the liver. Neither molecule is unusual on its own. The difference is quantity. For most of human history, obtaining large amounts of sugar required effort. Now sweetness can be purchased almost instantly. A single large soft drink can exceed the recommended daily limit for added sugar. What was once scarce became abundant. What was once valuable became ordinary. Yet the biological attraction remained exactly the same. Technology changed the environment. Human biology changed much more slowly. Before humans refined sugar, there was honey, and humans valued it long before modern civilization. One of the oldest known depictions of honey gathering shows people harvesting wild honey thousands of years ago. Finding honey wasn't easy. It often meant climbing cliffs, searching forests, or reaching into wild bee colonies. Yet people kept doing it, because honey offered something incredibly rare. Concentrated sweetness. Ancient Egyptians prized honey. They used it as food, as an ingredient in medicine, and sometimes as an offering in religious practices. The ancient Greeks associated honey with nourishment and abundance. Across cultures, honey became more than a sweetener. It became something symbolic, and part of that symbolism still survives today. Honey feels different from white sugar, not just because of the flavor, but because it feels connected to nature. It contains a mixture of sugars alongside small amounts of other naturally occurring compounds. And depending on where the bees collected nectar, honey can taste remarkably different. Some varieties are floral, others are herbal. Some have citrus notes, others taste earthy or rich. But nutritionally, honey is still a concentrated source of sugars. Your body still recognizes many of its primary components as sugars. That's an important distinction. Natural does not mean fundamentally different. Yet honey continues to feel special, maybe because it connects modern humans to something ancient, a sweetness discovered long before factories ever existed. Nature has always been good at marketing. Maple syrup feels almost impossible, because it begins as tree sap, thin, clear, almost like water. During a short seasonal window, producers collect sap from maple trees and boil it down for hours. The transformation is dramatic. To create 1 liter of maple syrup, producers often use around 40 liters of sap. 40 to 1. That's concentration on a massive scale. And you can taste it. Real maple syrup isn't simply sweet. People often describe flavors that resemble caramel, vanilla, toasted sugar, and light smoke. It feels connected to the forest where it originated, and perhaps that's part of its appeal. Maple syrup feels seasonal, temporary, a reminder that sweetness was once tied to specific times of year. Humans tend to value things more when they feel rare. Maple syrup still carries some of that feeling, like sweetness borrowed from nature for a brief moment before the season disappears again. Rice syrup is where food marketing becomes especially interesting. Because it sounds healthy immediately, rice feels familiar, simple, clean, safe, and food companies understand that perception. But chemistry doesn't care about branding. Rice syrup is rich in glucose-based carbohydrates, which means it can raise blood sugar relatively quickly. Many consumers never realize this, because the packaging often tells a different story. Earth tone colors, words like natural, words like organic, words like plant-based. The product feels healthy before you even read the nutrition information, and that's a powerful psychological effect. Humans rarely judge food purely by chemistry. We judge it by appearance, by language, by expectation, by storytelling. Sometimes marketing changes perception more than ingredients do. Date syrup tastes ancient because its story is ancient. Long before modern food manufacturing, long before industrial sugar, date palms were helping support human communities across some of the driest regions on Earth. In places where many crops struggled, date palms often survived. For thousands of years, dates provided energy, nutrition, and reliable food in environments where resources could be unpredictable. Entire communities depended on them. Trade routes carried dates across deserts. Travelers packed them for long journeys. Markets sold them alongside spices, textiles, and other valuable goods. Whole dates contain fiber, minerals, and plant compounds. Date syrup keeps some of the character and flavor of the original fruit, although it remains a concentrated sweetener. But what makes date syrup memorable isn't just nutrition, it's flavor. Dark caramel, molasses, brown sugar, almost smoky, almost buttery. It feels deeper than ordinary sweetness, and dates also carry cultural meaning. For millions of people, they are connected to family traditions, fasting, hospitality, and celebration. That's where sugar becomes something more than chemistry. It becomes memory. It becomes culture. It becomes identity. Coconut sugar became popular for a simple reason. It looks healthier. Brown crystals feel natural, earthy, traditional. White sugar feels industrial, processed, artificial. That visual difference is surprisingly powerful. Because humans don't judge food purely by nutrition. We judge it by appearance. The same reason a rustic wooden table can make food feel more authentic. The same reason dark bread often feels healthier than white bread. Our brains create stories long before we read labels. And coconut sugar fits perfectly into the modern wellness story. A natural alternative, a less processed choice, a better option. But nutritionally, coconut sugar is still primarily sugar. Sucrose remains one of its major components. Yes, it contains small amounts of minerals. Yes, some people prefer its flavor. But it is not a magical loophole. Your body still recognizes it as a source of sugar. And maybe that's one of the recurring themes throughout this entire video. Chemistry matters. Marketing matters too. But chemistry wins. Now things become genuinely strange. Because monk fruit breaks one of the oldest rules in human evolution. Sweetness usually means calories. For millions of years, that relationship was incredibly reliable. If something tasted sweet, energy was probably coming. Your brain learned that lesson long before civilization existed. Then monk fruit arrived. Monk fruit sweeteners can be around 150 to 200 times sweeter than sugar, yet they contribute very few calories. Most of that sweetness comes from compounds called mogrosides, compounds that are processed differently from ordinary sugar. For the first time, sweetness and energy become separated. And that's fascinating, because it creates an experience that barely existed throughout most of human history. Your tongue experiences sweetness, your brain receives the signal, but the calories never arrive. Researchers continue studying how non-caloric sweeteners may influence appetite, cravings, and eating behavior. The science is still evolving, but the underlying idea remains remarkable. Modern humans can now experience intense sweetness, without the energy that once always followed. It's a completely new chapter in the history of sugar. And now the sweetener that comes with a warning: xylitol, a sugar substitute commonly found in gum, toothpaste, mints, candies, and sugar-free products. For humans, xylitol behaves very differently from ordinary sugar. It generally causes a much smaller rise in blood sugar. Many oral bacteria also struggle to use it as fuel. That's one reason dentists often recommend products that contain xylitol. But dogs are different, very different. A quantity that seems insignificant to a human can be dangerous for a dog. Even relatively small amounts may trigger a powerful insulin release. Blood sugar levels can fall rapidly. Serious symptoms can follow, which is why veterinarians repeatedly warn pet owners to keep xylitol-containing products away from dogs. One molecule, different biology, completely different outcomes. And it's a reminder that food is never just chemistry. It's chemistry interacting with a living system. And every living system is different. The story of sugar is really the story of scarcity becoming abundance. Because the human attraction to sweetness evolved in a world where sweet foods were often limited, seasonal, occasional, valuable. A ripe fruit wasn't guaranteed. Honey wasn't guaranteed. Sugar wasn't guaranteed. And when something is rare, it becomes meaningful. Then modern civilization changed everything. Today, sweetness is available almost everywhere. Any season, any time, any quantity. And that changes behavior. Sugar stopped being only a source of energy. It became comfort, celebration, entertainment, memory. Think about how many important moments in life involve sweetness. Birthday cake, wedding cake, holiday desserts, a favorite candy from childhood. Sweet foods became attached to experiences, attached to emotions, attached to people. And that's why conversations about sugar are rarely just conversations about nutrition. Because humans don't eat food as chemistry alone. We eat stories, we eat memories, we eat traditions. Sugar became emotional long before nutrition science ever existed. And maybe that's why sweetness remains so powerful. Not because humans are weak, not because people lack discipline, but because one of humanity's oldest survival signals became connected to some of our strongest memories. For thousands of years, sweetness meant something valuable was waiting. A reward, a celebration, a moment of abundance, and part of the human brain still responds to that signal today. Every civilization discovered sweetness. Modern civilization multiplied it, and somewhere deep inside the human brain,